Hello, everyone. This is me, Keto, and this will be our part 0, also known as our background information. So, for some starter info, Izuku was born in the early stages of Quirk society. And as society was adjusting to the new super-powered thieves and all that, there was someone else, though. This man named Chio was the first ever villain to make an organization out of it. He manipulated people, and he built an empire, ruling most of Hero Society right now. Or Quirk Society, as it was called. Lots of people tried to crumble it down, but no one could beat his overpowered quirk. That of which being having wings that could shoot very, very strong lightning bolts at super fast speeds. But Izuku, when he was born, at least when he thought he was born, he remembered a faint glow from his mother and his father, but he never could remember their face, and he just remembers one day waking up as a 13-year-old, not knowing anything, and having a snake quirk, along with two swords with snakes around them. As Izuku says, What is happening? Where am I? As he immediately got flooded with some basic knowledge of what was happening. And Izuku starts thinking to himself, I need to go somewhere. I need to learn stuff. As he goes to an information center, as they were called, to give the people who didn't know what were happening, because the lockdown they had issued for when they saw the first quirk baby, given they were telling everyone out. And when Izuku got all the information he needed, he walked out with 2 people dead. 1, 2. As he marched outside, he saw a massive fire in the distance and thought to himself, I wonder what's happening over there. As a hero, a developing society with people who proclaim themselves as heroes, he walked past Izuku and says, Do you see anything, citizen? As Izuku points to the fire and says, That's probably bad. You should check it out. And the hero immediately rushes over there with his wings going at hypersonic speeds, as he then sees a bigger fire erupt. As Izuku says, figures, as he walks towards the explosion slowly. And the guards for Chio at least, who was guarding the perimeter from heroes that didn't have flight, saw Izuku and asked, Sir, we'd like to ask you to carefully leave. There is an attack from our Lord, and we'd like it to not be disrupted, and let the people come to justice. As Izuku says, You call death and bloodshed justice? As he gets out his sword and stabs one of the guards through the chest and says, That's not my justice. As he looks over to the other guard, who is petrified, and says, What kind of 13 are you? What kind of 13-year-old? As Izuku says, I'm not a normal one. As he puts up a mask to cover up the blood on his mouth, and quickly puts another sword through his chest and retracts it. As he throws the mask off of him and says, Let's go sort this out. As he continues walking towards the explosion, the stronger and stronger guards were there to mainly help that ground heroes didn't get to them. As Izuku hit the second border, as they were called, he met a little stronger resistance, but when they said, "You're not getting past here, kid. Now just go along to your parents, you useless runt." As Izuku said, "What did you say?" As he said, "You heard me, runt." As Izuku slashes at his throat. As the man falls to the ground, the other 10 guards say, "Get him!" As they all come rushing towards Izuku, as Izuku just thinks to himself, "What pests?" As he dodges an axe that was made from their hand and was complete gold. As Izuku slashes at his chest, making the man fall into the ground, he begins cutting the other ones. And when he finally makes the other one to fall down, he says, If any of you even try to get up, I would like to see you even attempt to walk out of here alive after that." As he begins walking towards the third border, one of the men, specifically the one with the golden axe quirk, says, "Die, runt!" As Izuku says, "You fool!" As he deflects the axe and says, "Snakes!" As the man says, "What?" As 2 snakes bite him on the neck, as the man passes out. As Izuku says, "Finish them." As, sorry guys, sorry about that. The TV remote flew at me. Izuku collects one of his snakes to keep following him, as the other one finishes his job. As Izuku snickers to himself, resistance is futile in your childish views, you anarchists. As the final border stares dead at him and says, "You've eliminated the first and second. I didn't think anyone else could get this far, not even the heroes. You're not even a registered hero." As Izuku says, "Cut the chit-chat." As Izuku holds both of his swords in his hands and says, "This should be easy." As he rushes towards the guards as they begin fighting him, as Izuku initially can't get a hit off. At least that's what the guards think. But Izuku gets behind one that was getting very overconfident as he tips his sword up in the air. As the guard says, "How?" As Izuku flips his blade around, cutting him through the chest and saying, "You got too cocky." As the guard drops to his knees and says, "He will hear to this," as he falls to the ground. As Izuku says, "I'm sure he will," as he holds his blades together, making them a 2-hilted blade, kind of like a double spear, or like a dual-bladed lightsaber, kind of. As Izuku begins fighting the other guards, they're initially shocked with his amount of skill, but they think they can overwhelm him. But their strongest one, who was in the back, waiting to challenge Izuku one-on-one, got bit by the very venomous snake and fell to the ground. Definitely dead. Instead of like a king cobra with like 500 times the normal amount of poison, this one had 15,000 times. Painful. Yeah. As Izuku kicks the final guard into the road and says, "Accept your fate." As he puts his sword up in the air and says, "Now accept your mistakes," as he throws his sword into there. As one of the guards gets impaled as Izuku says, "Don't make the same mistake as them," as he walks off. They call me the mercy god. Sometimes I don't understand why. I don't let them live usually. As Izuku finally arrives at the battle, as Chio looks over to him and says, "Oh, a challenger, have we?" I'm much more than that. As he takes both of his blades out of the double hilt version and says, "I'd like to fight you." As he puts one of his swords away and held his only sword now in his hand and says, "This should be good enough," as he ties his left arm around his back and says, "Let's dance." As he begins fighting the villain. As the villain says, "How? What's happening? How am I being defeated?" As Izuku managed to deflect his highly condensed lightning bolts, somehow deflecting them back at him with good enough reflexes. As Izuku is even astonished with himself, saying, "I don't know how I'm doing this." As he begins cutting the man down, as the man fell to the ground, very exhausted, and looks up to see Izuku and saying, "You're scum." As he turns his blade to slash at the mob boss, but the mob boss looks back up as Izuku says, "Die, Chio." As Chio says, "Thank you for the opening." As Izuku point blank gets blasted with a massive lightning bolt attack. As Izuku flies back with smoke coming off of him, says, "You're the first one to do damage to me. You'll be the last." As Izuku kicks him up into the air and says, "Fly, I don't care. It'll be worse for you if you do." As the secret guard comes from behind Izuku, as Izuku is cut on the neck with a poisonous spear, as Izuku turns around, immediately stabbing the guard through the heart and saying, "You're going to regret that," as he begins limping towards the very injured and exhausted Chio, as they both say, "Can't we just finish this?" As Chio goes up into the air and says, "Dive bomb, electricity bolt, Kirin," as the man puts his two hands together and charges towards Izuku like a drill. As Izuku says, "Full power of the snakes. I will win this." As I don't know what I was going to say. No. As Izuku says, "Full power of the snakes," as the single-hilted snake blade goes to 4 snakes. As Izuku says, "Feel my wrath," as he slashes down. As the villain gets his head nearly ripped off. As his hands are cut like bananas. Quite literally. As the mob boss falls to the ground, his hands and some of his skull on the ground, as Izuku says, "All mortals make mistakes," as he walks away, throwing a knife at the boss right on the leg. As the man began to bleed out, he says, "Wait, will you carry on my will? Please, lead this horrific world to something prosperous. I just want to see something nice when I die." But if you do something like I did, that would be nice too. Become a good villain boss. I deem you the leader of the League of Villains. all for power. As Izuku says, okay. As Chio falls to the ground, dead. As Izuku says, that just happened. And that, everyone, is where I'll be leaving off for part 0. This is just like background information and like a backstory. So yeah. I might do a what if continuing this if part 1 gets a lot of views. I don't expect this one to get as much. I will maybe start doing part 0s. I just fell in the mood to do this. So yeah, this is... What are we named? Yeah, let's check. 1,500 subscribers, guys. You guys are amazing. So yeah, this is Keto, signing off. Goodbye, everyone.